Well, hey, welcome to church today. So glad that you're with us. And we're going to go through a series of questions today. We're going to start real easy, real relatable, and they're going to work our way towards more thought-provoking, deeper questions. And so I want you to really consider this first question today. It's really simple. All of us can answer this very sincerely and honestly. And here's the first question I want us to look at today is this: what is something that you love? What is something that you love? Think in your life, of all the things in your life right now, if you were to say, man, I just love that, what would it be? Maybe it's a spouse. Maybe you love your spouse. It's a person. It's a child. Maybe it's something that you do. Maybe it's a hobby that you have. Maybe it's a destination that you love to go to. It's a place that you love. All of us have things that we love, right? So take a moment and just think about what that one thing is for you. And if you're live with us today, go ahead and type that in the chat. What is something that you love? Let us know what that is. And if you're hanging out with somebody or around somebody, just reach over to them, just ask them, what is something that you love? See what they respond to and what they say. For me, I love all kinds of things. And so I use this word all of the time. I mean, I really love my spouse, and so I'll tell my spouse I love her. I love my kids, tell them I love them all the time. And then in moments later, I can start talking about other things that I love. I love pizza. I love tacos. I mean, I love all kinds of nachos and hot dogs. I mean, I love food. I love to go places. I travel all of these different locations that I love to go to. I use this word love all of the time, and it's probably the same for you too, isn't it? You use the word to describe your affection towards so many different things in your life. The problem with that, though, and you can probably relate to this as well, is that over time, this word love kind of loses its appeal, its luster, its excitement, its intention of what it's supposed to do. I mean, when we say we love something, isn't it supposed to have this endearment to it, or this luster to it, or the excitement to it, something that really attracts us to whatever that is that we say that we love. But over time, since we use the word all the time, what happens is that it doesn't have its power anymore. And today, as we continue and wrap up this series, what I want us to do is just think about that thing that we love, or those things that we love in the back of our mind, the things that we talk about all the time that we say that we love, as we explore today's question, because today we're going to look at the very last question. It's going to kind of take a different turn than the rest of the series has had. And this question, I'll be honest with you, is going to require the most from us. So keep that in the back of your minds as we continue to go through today. And welcome today. If this is your first time to Atlee, we're so glad that you're here. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Trey. I'm one of the teaching pastors here on staff. And we just want to take a moment and just say thanks for taking your time to hang out with us for the next few moments. And we've been in this series called Better Decisions, Fewer Regrets. It's from a book by a guy named Andy Stanley, popular pastor, teacher, and author. And in this book, he outlines all these different questions that are important for us to ask no matter what decisions in life that we face, so that we can live the better lives that Christ has called us to live, and live with fewer regrets. And the big premise behind this book has been this: good questions lead to good decisions. If we can ask the right questions, if we could take a moment before we make a big decision in our life and just pause and ask the right questions that will lead us to the right decisions, it will hopefully help us live with fewer regrets. And here's the questions we've looked at thus far, just to kind of give you a quick recap in case this is your first week with us. But I would encourage you, go back on our on-demand section on our website or Facebook or YouTube and catch up on this series. It's been a really good time together over the last few weeks. But here are the questions we've looked at so far as we approach big decisions. Here's some questions we should consider. Number one, am I being honest with myself really? Taking a moment to really do some soul searching and realize, are we being real with ourselves? Because we talked about we can fool ourselves. We are our biggest salesperson sometimes against the right decisions we need to make. The second question we looked at is this: what story do I want to tell? When we think about the decisions that we make, we think ahead and think about the story that we want to tell with our lives. And is this a chapter that we want to write? Next question is there a tension that deserves my attention? We've all had that tension, those moments where we're trying to make the right decision, something feels off. And we talked about we need to pay attention to that. And last week we looked at this big question, what is the wise thing to do? And so all of these questions have been focused on us and us trying to figure out the decisions we need to make. But the turn we're going to take today that's going to make this question we're going to look at a little different is that this one is more focused on how our decisions and our regrets impact others. Because we talked about that as well in the series, that our decisions and things that we do in our lives don't just directly affect us, it affects those around us. And this question really takes us to the point where we have to consider other people in our decisions. It's really going to require the most of you and I to really think about how we consider other people when it comes to our decisions. And here's the thing about this question. This question will keep those closest to you close to you. It will keep those people in your life that are important to you close to you and in your life and being a part of your life. And the thing about this question too is there's not really a guarantee of a return on investment on this one. This one's more about how your life is going to make a difference and impact those around you. So it's a really important question to ask. And so today we're going to look at where this question originated from. And it actually started over 2,000 years ago when Jesus really introduced this whole new thought for us when it comes to how we love other people. See, Jesus had spent 3 years of his life doing ministry on earth. And he had done an incredible work in 3 years. He had gathered these people called disciples, and they kind of became his best buddies, and they hung out all the time, and he taught them and loved on them and poured into their lives over those 3 years. He taught in these large crowds and had this huge following of people that were just constantly learning and trying to figure out who this guy Jesus was all about. He even was healing people and doing things that people just weren't expecting of this guy. And so people were drawn to Jesus. And it becomes this moment for Jesus' life where he's been leading up to talking about this new big thing that he wants to introduce to the world. He's setting his disciples up to tell them what he wants them to do next. And so what he decides to do, like any of us, he decides to throw a meal. This would be his last big Passover meal, and he would invite all of those closest to him around this table and have this one last dinner with them. During this dinner, I can imagine those closest to him, his disciples, are trying to figure out, well, why is he called the dinner party tonight? Like, what's this about? What's he got to tell us? He's been leading up to this new thing that he wants to tell us. I wonder what it is. And so Jesus begins to invite them over to hang out, and they're having the dinner, and then he begins to really tell them about why he wanted them to be there. Because he really wanted to teach them something that was going to set them up for the rest of their future. He's going to give them some powerful words to hold on to in this passage we're going to read here in a moment. And even later in the New Testament of the Bible, a guy named Paul, who wrote most of our New Testament, tells us that these words that Jesus is about to share are so important to our Christian faith that this would become the epicenter, the focus of the Christian movement going forward. And that all of us should pay attention to, because this would label Christianity forever. And these words are going to set up our question today. It's found in John 13, 34 through 35. And here's what Jesus is starting to tell his disciples about this new that's to come. Here's what he shares. The first part says, "A new command I give you." Now, this is where the disciples are probably on the edge of their seat, like, yes, the new thing. That's what he's been talking about. He's finally going to share. What is he going to tell us? But see, commands weren't something new to them. They knew from the Old Testament that there were so many commands that they were to follow and rules that were applied to their life. And so these weren't new, but he's setting them up for something. And then here's what he tells them next. He says, it's to love one another. Now, this wasn't a huge thing for them to understand as well. Jesus, prior to this, had told them that all the laws and all the commandments, the most important ones as they move forward, were to love God and to love other people. And so they're like, Jesus, that's not really anything new. I mean, you've kind of told us that. Like, what is this all about? But this next part, this is the part that would get them all in awe. And it would shock them to figure out how they were going to live this out. And here's what he shares. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. So here he takes this word love and he takes it to a whole nother level. He begins to tell them that the way in which they're to love other people and love everybody around them is the same way in which he has spent time loving them. That the way that he loved was now the new standard of love. That God sent him to earth to show the world, to show the earth what love was all about. And he was about to love everybody so much that he was about to sacrifice his life for people that didn't even know him, for people that were against him. And that this would be the love that the disciples would carry on from that point forward. This new love, this new commandment wasn't something that was going to be easy. And so I can imagine all the disciples are so confused, like, how are we going to do this? And then Jesus tells them that he's going to be leaving and that this is going to be something they carry out from this point forward. And the disciples at this moment got to be like, Jesus has gone crazy. I mean, he's got the most crowds following him right now. He's got so much going on. Why would he leave now? And it's because he was about to demonstrate his love in a way that nobody else had seen before. He was about not to make love words. He was about to turn love into action by going to a cross and dying for you and for me. And so I can imagine the disciples were like, okay, Jesus spent this time pouring into my life, investing into my life. I've seen how he loves people. How am I going to love other people like that? And then a few days later, for them to see what Jesus did, demonstrating his love for the world on a cross and dying for them, was something that they would never imagine that the Savior of the world would do for them. And then they would have to figure out how to love other people like that, which leads us to me and you today. If you call yourself a Christian, if you'd experience God's love, the great thing is that he freely gave you forgiveness, mercy, grace, love, things that we do not deserve. And then our call now is to love other people with that same love. And you probably are wondering, like I'm wondering, how do we do that? How do we love like God loves us? But that is our challenge. And honestly, that's our calling. That's what Jesus set up for you and I to do. Some of us, we may do this really well, and some of us may have a lot of work to do. But that's what we're going to spend the next few moments talking about, of how we can apply this to our lives. How can we take this love and make it our own? Because then in verse 35, here's what Jesus tells us about this love. He says this, by this love, everyone will know that you're my disciples, what? If you love one another. So if you want to show people about what God's all about, if you want to demonstrate that, if you want to be my disciples, if you want to follow me, here's the challenge. Love. Love other people the way that I loved you. Treat people the way I treated you. Show and honor people the way that I showed and honored you. If you want to be my disciples, this is what it's going to take. And for you and I, that's the challenge for us to figure out how we can love with such a love that Christ came to give us. And so today, that's what we're going to explore over the next few moments together. And we're going to look at our question. But as we think about this today, this would forever change the way Christ followers would live back then. And it honestly should change the way you and I think and act today when it comes to how we love people. Because this is what love would then turn into for you and I and for the early disciples. Jesus' followers would now demonstrate their devotion to God by putting the person next to them in front of them. By putting the person next to them in front of them. It no longer was an eye for an eye or tooth for a tooth or they get what they deserve. That was so last century. This was a new commandment. This was a new standard of love Jesus is setting in place. And this is what you and I are supposed to live out in our lives. And so if we want our relationships around us to work, if we want those closest to us to stay close to us, if we want to make a difference and an impact on the world around us, the relationship question is the one you and I have to come to terms with today. And here is what today's question is. The relationship question is this: what does love require of me? What does love require of me? Better asked, how do I live out this new command that Jesus taught so many years ago? And how do other people see that love and experience God's love because of it? What does love require from you and from me? And this is a hard one for us to ask because a lot of the times, let's just be real, we like to get by with as little as possible sometimes, don't we? Like we like to not give our all sometimes when it comes to loving people around us because at the end of the day, a lot of our focus is about us. And so when our spouse comes to us and needs something done, we either say something under our breath or we get, just upset about the stupidest things, and then we go off and do our thing. Or kids, think about your parents. Man, if they ask you to do something or a chore because they really need your help, and instead of saying, man, I would love to help and serve my parents, what's the first thing we go to is, I don't want to do that. They're messing with my time, right? Because so much of our self-focus is about us instead of how we can serve and love others around us. This question's really practical. And this question hits at the core of who we are, and it addresses all of those parts of our lives that are selfish or self-focused or that do not pay attention to others around us. And so what does love require from you and from me? What does it look like? The good thing is I think a lot of us would ask this question, so what do I do with this? So Jesus gives us this new commandment, right? What do I do with it? It's kind of like when your wife or maybe your husband asks you to go to the grocery store, right? And if you're like me, I'm a wanderer in the grocery store, and I look for all the things that are bad for me. And so I end up coming up with, tubs of cookies and ice cream when I go to the grocery store by myself. Nothing that's going to benefit the family in which I'm bringing it home to. My kids may love me for a day, but their stomachs hate me the next morning. And so my wife, she crafts a list for me every time I go to the grocery store, and it's my job to take that list and get the things that I need. And I'm so thankful for the list because it helps me stay focused on what I'm there for. And the great thing is the New Testament writers of the Bible, they did the same thing with Jesus's instructions to love others. They took Jesus' command and they added some of these lists, some qualities of Christ followers that help us understand how to love people better. Paul, like I told you earlier, an author and writer of much of our New Testament, he has a great encounter with God and ends up changing his life around. And all of a sudden, he sees these qualities of the Spirit that should be inside all of our lives. And I wonder if this life, or these words in this life describes you today. Let's look at this list together. These are the words that Paul gives us for those who are to walk in love and walk in Christ's Spirit every day. Here's what the qualities of our life should be: kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, and self-control. Now, when you think about your life and how you love other people and those closest to you, would they use these words to describe you? Would they say, man, that person's kind. Every time I'm around them, they're just so kind. They're so good. They're so gentle. They're full of faith and they have self-control. They don't just go after this or that. Or would they describe you another way? Would these words not be words that they would use for your life? I think for us, if we're going to love people better, we have to understand that these are qualities that we should consider when loving other people. Going on later, Paul writes to another group of people at a church in Corinth, and he begins to give them a bigger list about what love is and what love isn't. And you may have heard this verse at a wedding or something like that, but here's some words that help us put some action to love. And here's what these words are. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love does not envy. And love does not boast. Love is not proud. Love does not dishonor. Love is not self-seeking. Love is not rude. And love is not easily angered. And let's look at this next list about what love is. Listen to this. Love rejoices in the truth. Love always protects. Love always trusts. Love always hopes. And love always perseveres. These are strong words, aren't they? I would hope that our lives would be described this way. But what we just learned is also that there's some things that love isn't, you know? Love isn't envious. It does not boast. It is not proud. It's not self-seeking. It's not rude, and it's not easily angered. Would those words describe you today? Because I know for me, some of those words are kind of a punch in the heart when I consider my everyday life. And so for us, we have to try to figure out how we can love better so that these words would describe our lives better. And that you and I would really consider what God has done for us. And when we consider that, when Christ came and he gave everything for us, he didn't give us a little, he didn't, give us some grace or some mercy or some forgiveness. He came and gave it all. And now it's our opportunity, those who call ourselves Christ followers, to lay our pride aside, to lay our selfishness aside, and just say, hey, how can I love better? Or better said, going back to our question, what does love require of me? What does love require of you? And for us today, to live the life Christ has called us to live, we have to learn to love better. And you and I have to become the people that Christ has called us to be. And how do we do that? We take these words and we make them a part of our lives. And we don't just use them with words. We put them into action. And here's how this may look for you and for me. When I think about what does love require of me, I think about questions like this. Does love require me to listen more and talk less? Does love require me to give more and not hold it all for myself? Does love require me to forgive even when the other person does not deserve my forgiveness? Does love require me to be more understanding instead of less judgmental? Does love require me to do more instead of just doing everything for myself? I don't know what it looks like for you today, but I know what it looks like for me. I know for so long, there's people in my life that I care a lot about. And let's go back to our first question. Who is somebody that you love, or what is something that you love? And I know all of us can think about a person in our mind, can't we? About somebody that we love. And I wanted to make sure that everybody in my life, the people that I have close to me and the people that are far away from me, that when they encounter me, when they're around me, that they wouldn't experience anything else but love. And they would know how much I care about them through the way in which I love them with my actions. And for you and I today, how can we love better? And how can we be the people that God has called us to be? Because like I said, Christ came and he loved us with everything that he had. He spared nothing to show us his love. And for you and I today, we get the same opportunity to do that to those closest to us and the world around us. And so let's look at the questions that we've explored during this series as we look at how to make better decisions in our lives. And it's this: am I being honest with myself, really? As you approach your next big decision, what story do I want to tell? Is there attention that deserves my attention? What's the wise thing for me to do? And what does love require of me? What does love require of you today? And as you're thinking about this and you're thinking about these questions, I hope for this series that you don't just let these questions just become something we talk about. I pray that you take the questions that we've equipped you with during this series, that you take them back into your life, you take them back into your family, take them back into your community, take them back into your workplace, and make better decisions so that you can live with fewer regrets, so that you can write a better story, and that you can love like Christ has called you to live. And today, I know this is a lot. I know it's hard to figure out how to love like this because Christ did. He loved us in such a way that's hard for us to even understand at times. But for you and I, it's a deeper love that we can all choose to do better in. And so who can you love better today? Who can I love better today so that we can be the followers of Christ that we're called to be? As you think about that question today, what does love require of you? The band has prepared a song for us just to help us internalize everything we've talked about and help us just take a moment to process. And so as you listen to the lyrics of this next song about how much God loves you, I pray that it compels you today to take that love and love other people better with it. Let's take a listen to the band.